Hey everybody, you're the dragon here. Now, over the last few months I've been picking up various knives and I realized that the good portion of them were fixed blades and that I'd been carrying the same folding knives as my EDC for a long time. And so I just kind of wanted to update my EDC, and so this is the knife I came up with. This is the Benchmade Bugout. So, the quick question is, what do I think of this knife? Well, first let's go into the specs of the knife. Has an access lock. It uses CPM S30V steel, so it's a powder steel. The blade length is 3.24 inches. The blade thickness is 0.090. Open length is just below 7.5 inches. When it's closed, it's about 4.25 inches. The handle thickness is at 0.42 inches, and the overall weight of the knife is 1.8 ounces. Now, previously to this knife, I had primarily carried one of three knives. The primary one would probably be my Spyderco. That one was lost. That was for the Delica 4. I liked it. It was a good knife. Light, thin, but I was able to handle jobs, but it got lost, so I can't show it to you. The first folding knife for EDC rotation I picked up was this one. And this is another Benchmade, Purdue Designs. I think it's the 530, but I'm not quite sure. I've had this thing for probably coming up on almost a decade now, so it's held up really well, although, you know, it's been worn down just by use. Over time, I convex the edge, and now I do that with all my folding knives. What I liked about this knife was that it was lightweight and it was thin. What I didn't like is the blade shape. I wasn't a huge fan of such an aggressive spear point, and as time went on, I became less and less a fan of serrations. So as I updated from this knife, I wanted something beefier, so I got the Benchmade Barrage, the mini Barrage, half serrated. When I got rid of, decided I didn't like serrated, I got the mini Barrage in non-serrated. And I've bounced between these two knives because I didn't find anything perfect and they were suitable. But now if you look at this knife, it's actually a really great combo of these two knives. It has a very similar blade design, albeit a little bit longer as the mini Barrage, but it also has the thinness and the light weight of the Purdue design. And so as soon as I saw the Bugout, I knew I wanted this knife because it was a perfect match between these two, and I always thought if you could meld these two knives, you would get a great knife. So its overall purposes, as described by Benchmade, are for everyday carry and outdoor use. And I would be using this as an everyday carry knife. So the question is, how well does it do at everyday carry tasks? Well, the first thing it's going to be doing is like opening envelopes and such like that. So we go to the traditional paper test. I use phone book paper to test my knife sharpness because if you can't cut phone book paper, I don't think a knife is really that sharp. And with that, I actually go one step further. Cutting horizontally along the paper I find to be quite easy. Going from the vertical side going horizontal seems to be more difficult. So by default, if it does that, it's sharp. To be really sharp, it has to cut here. And this does it well. I mean, that's more user error. So clearly it's incredibly sharp. I did convex the edge of this. Another thing you might be doing is cutting some sort of cordage. So as far as that goes, just doing push cuts. Super easy, super clean. If you're actually gonna slice, once again, super easy, super clean. Cardboard. Once again, no problem. So that kind of brings me into the knife's primary use. It is an amazing slicer. As far as food prep, I mean, you can cut off like just stupid razor thin shavings. And I do use this for food prep, and it does great. Let me cut this in half. Okay. But as far as for food prep, it'll do fine. I mean, it just does really well. So as an EDC knife, you could do a lot worse. Now the price of this goes anywhere from about 110, 120 bucks. You're paying a lot for the Benchmade name. But overall, you get a good quality knife. I would say that with the FRN or Grivery handles, you're able to compress them, but they don't flex and they are strong. I personally would want a little more rigidity. The issue with that is there are aftermarket scales in G10 for this, which I will be purchasing, but they're about another 75, 80 bucks, which turns this into a $200 knife pretty quick. And at that cost, I'm not sure if it's really worth it. I will probably do it because I really like this design. But there are knives that other people would say are better in that category. And I wouldn't necessarily disagree with them. The action on it is relatively smooth. So as far as I get pretty much 10 out of 10 on this. I might miss one like that, but in general, it's very reliable and very easy to open. The question I always try to think about as of lately is it ambidextrous? And access locks in general are, this has the little thumb stud on both sides, so I can open it both-handed, and I am not very coordinated with my left hand, especially when it comes to fine motor skill tasks. But I can do it with this knife, which means that it's actually a really good ambidextrous knife. I would recommend it for lefties, just because the aspect of, if I can do it, I'm pretty sure anybody can. The things I don't like pretty much all reside in the handle. It does feel more plasticky, even though I have zero problem with it on this knife, nor this knife, and it's all the same Grivery handles. What it comes down to is the texturing. So this one has just the straight, I don't know if you'd call it up and down or horizontal, that's just going to be dependent, but they're straight grooves. Once again, it's not overly done. This one uses that more checkered board or diamond pattern, and it just feels more plasticky because of that. Outside of it, it actually feels fine in my opinion, but I'm not a really big fan of that. And yeah, that, like, just overall, that is the biggest feeling, is that it just kind of feels, the only way I can describe it is it's a really good knife that feels like a really cheap knife. Once again, I would never expect it to fail, but yeah, I personally would, yeah, G10 would be a much better choice on this. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. If I was to give it a ranking out of 10, I would give this a solid 7.5, 8. If it had G10, I would probably jump it up to 9, 9.5. I also think that I don't necessarily like this gap. I know why it exists, and I know functionally it's there, but I find that the better design knives don't, that really function on it, really gets this line smooth. That's just kind of an aesthetic gripe. They did kind of soften the edges though, so it's not aggressive in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, in general, I really like this knife. It is an amazing slicer. I cannot express that enough. The thin stock means that if you were just cutting things up throughout the day, this is going to work great. If you need a hard use knife, you might want to get something more robust. Whether you go with the mini barrage or something like that. With S30V, I found that lateral stress can cause chipping. It's nothing against the flawless steel. It's plenty tough. I just found that when it comes up against something a little harder, I've found it to chip off with lateral stress. So this is a slicing knife, not necessarily a hard use beater knife. But we'll see over time if I put it through more abuse. So anyways, just let me know your thoughts, comments. One last thing, it does say it is an outdoor knife. I would call this a companion outdoor knife. I would not call this a direct outdoor knife, unless you're an ultralight backpacker, and then I would completely say this is good enough for you. But I will say, I was doing feathering with this, and because of its thinness and its angle, it just puts out stupid thin feathers. And it's just, yeah, it's great for something like that. I would call it a good companion knife. I would definitely question whether or not I would put this as my catch-all. On something a little more like difficult, like this orange wood, once again, I mean, it'll do feather sticks really well. I would not think of this as a hard use knife to go on to anything like really significant. That's a personal preference. Other people who like to beat the crap out of the knives might say, oh, this can totally do it. But I do like this knife. I'd say, as I said, 7.5, 8. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And yeah, hopefully I'll be able to show you what other stuff I've been bringing up pretty soon. Thanks a lot.